Hello, I'm Vicki Rhodes. I'm here today to share with you step-by-step instructions and inspiration to create your own magnet board for someone special in your life. Similar to this one. Let's get started. So before we begin, let's look at the finished magnet board. And what I've done is I found the paper that I liked, and then I found some embellishments to go along with it that were kind of to carry through the theme. And this was actually for my grandson, so I put his initials on the buttons, and the buttons are just glued to magnets. And the key to have a big enough surface to be glued to was glued onto a button first. Now this is a ticket that I glued onto actually the reverse side of this scrapbook paper and put all-purpose sealer on it to make it more durable, and then that is one of the magnets as well. This magnet is again just a button with fiber round through, tied in a knot. You can use a crochet hook to pull that through, and then I just embellished with just half bows so it didn't look anything but like a little boy. So to begin, the surface is actually a repurposed sign, a metal sign, and it had the chain through the sign already, so I just removed that to start. Now if my surface were shiny at all, I would take some sandpaper and buff it so that the surface wasn't too slick. And then I would cut a piece of paper, of my scrapbook paper, and there are so many wonderful choices, so that it is 9 3/4 and by 9 3/4. If your scrapbook paper is heavier, it's going to be a little bit easier to work with. So to begin, I'm going to use a piece of freezer paper, which is shiny on one side, matte on the other, and you want the shiny side up. I'm going to mix all-purpose sealer, which is a product that is like adding super glue onto your surface, so it makes it more durable. That's also what we're going to use to adhere your paper to the surface. So it's a little bit heavy, and I want it to absorb into my paper. So I'm going to thin it just about 2 parts all-purpose sealer to 1 part of water. And I'm going to mix that up good. Now I'm going to start on the back, and I'm going to use one of these handy little rollers and dip into my sealer and my water mix, and I'm going to start by just rolling that onto my surface. Now I'm on my scrapbook, or excuse me, on my freezer paper, and I want to make certain that I get it covered well. When it starts to dry, if I haven't covered it like I should have, what will happen is there will be air bubbles, and that is an indication that I have had dry spots on my surface. I didn't get it covered well enough. So after I get the back done, I'm going to flip it over onto my freezer paper, again the shiny side up, and I'm going to continue applying that onto the front of my paper, making certain that it goes all the way into the surface. Brush it back. Now, so that I don't have bumps, I'm going to take a brush and lightly smooth that. And if I have too much of my sealer, I'll just take a paper towel and remove the excess, because I don't want to have the texture that just leaving that alone after I have rolled it is going to leave. Super, super simple. Also, I love what this does to the scrapbook paper because it really brightens the color. It's almost like putting a layer of glass over the top. So now I'm going to let that dry. Please make certain that when you use the all-purpose sealer, you don't get it anywhere that you don't want it, and wash your brush out quickly, but use cold water. Now I'm going to let that dry for 24 hours, and then we'll do the next. So after our paper has dried, then one suggestion as well, you may want to tape down your freezer paper because you can see that this has rolled up, and so my paper has rolled as well. And as I put it on, it might be a little more difficult to get it to adhere to the surface. So I'm going to peel it off of my freezer paper, and you can see that there is a little bit of the all-purpose sealer on the edge, and I can take some scissors and just run along there and get rid of that. Before I start little bits of it, it's not going to bother me. And then we're ready to adhere it to our metal surface. So after I have trimmed off the excess, I'm going to flip over my paper, and I'm going to run my all-purpose sealer water mix onto the back. And I would suggest leaving your freezer paper underneath so it doesn't get on anything that it shouldn't. Now I'm going to again then run it on to my surface, covering it really well. Now I can take the brush and brush it out. Now as I'm working, if this were any larger surface than what it is, I would actually take either a credit card, or I have taken my spatula apart and removed just the wooden handle, and I can work with my spatula from the center out and wipe it off on a paper towel if you have too much, which it's better to have too much than not enough. And I'm going to work from the center out and get this to lay down. Now, sometimes your paper will stretch just a little bit, so if this happens, not to panic. We can take an X-Acto knife and run along the edge and trim anything that we think needs to be removed. Okay, and I'll just work that down. And then I can take a moist paper towel. You want to make sure that there are no air bubbles in this spatula, being just a soft rubber. You can push and not worry about it damaging your paper. So remove the excess. Then when I get it to where I feel like I've got it down, I can run my finger along the edges and even use a damp paper towel to clean up. And make sure everything is going to adhere. There we go. Now I have a little bit of a bubble right there. So I'm just going to come back, and you can see that just took that right out. And then wipe off the excess again. Watch your edges and just dampen that paper towel and rub, and you can get rid of those. You want to make sure everything is pushed really tight against the surface before you set it aside and allow it to dry. All right, now after that is dry, we're going to start to embellish. Now, we need to find from the back, we've got our little holes where the chain comes, and we don't want to forget to poke a hole through that. And just use your X-Acto knife, and you can just mark through to the front and then punch through from front to back for your holes. It's not punching. There we go. There we go. So to find your holes, and then we're going to start to do what I call my color addition. And I love to lay several things on and see which I'm going to like the best. Now we've got yellow. We could go with hot pink, which I have some really fun buttons. Now, you can use buttons, you can use charms. Here's a charm. This is actually an old earring that could be used. These are some of the papers from the scrapbooking section in the store that are awesome as well. So anything can be used. We've got some keys. Now these could be put on buttons and used as embellishments. They could actually be used individually and ran through a ribbon and then tied up and through the hole of the buttons. So we could like the pink. Now, and I would lay these out and look at them for a day or two and see which I liked best. Now, I love, which it's my choosing day, so I'm going to choose the red. I love the red, so that is what I would use for my magnets. Now, I could use red and white or red and pink if I wanted to as well. And then there are some wonderful fibers. So it's your choice as to what you put together. Now that is one. This one, thank you. Thanks. There we go. This one would be cute. I liked the lime green with that. A little bit of glitz. We've got to have glitz. And some fun ribbon as well. Now I just leave the black portion of the metals showing. If you wanted to, I do have a sample that I feel like it needs to be painted. You could just run a little bit of paint either before you started or now that you're finished along that edge, just a brown paint that would match my background, and then you wouldn't even see that there was the black edge on that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I have chosen my magnets, what I want to put on my magnets, and I just use a heavy magnet and then we're just going to hot glue them in place. I've already put, again, glued my magnet onto a button. My button is holding my key so that it holds it out a little bit and it's got a big enough surface for it to hold it in place. Now this is an old earring and you can simply slip off, break off, or clip the back of the earring off and then put your magnet on the back. And you can stack your buttons. So these two I'm going to put glue on the back, stack my buttons, being careful not to burn you. This one I have ran a ribbon through, and again you may use a crochet hook to pull that back and through and just tie it in a bow. Then I will put my hot glue on my magnet and glue my button to the magnet. So we've glued all of our magnets onto different surfaces. Our buttons, now you could also use a domino or bits of games that are, when you've got lost pieces, that's the perfect place to use them. And then I've added just a ribbon on my chain. You could put as much or as little. You could actually run fibers up through your chain if you want. It's your choice. Make it yours, make it special, and it's ready for gift giving or to either stand on an easel or hang on a wall, or even it could be used on a doorknob to display photos and other treasures. So here we have our finished treasures. This one definitely for the boys in the house and this one for the girls. So gather up all your treasures, buttons, earrings, old jewelry, anything that you have that you'd like to include, and get busy and make your own. Thank you so much. It's been a delight.